Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Sam Zagar. It's been a minute. I had some vacation time to take. I've done it. I'm rested. I'm back and ready to work. So we're back into our recordings and we are kind of re-kicking these off with something new. Something new is being initiated. I'm reading for my first baby. I'm reading for a 1-year-old. And it's a 1-year-old emotional manifestor. Of course, it would be a manifestor baby to kick off these child readings. Child readings, baby readings, either way. The baby's mother booked a reading and said, could you please give me tips for parenting my emotional manifestor child? So let's get the baby's body graph up on the screen. Okay, so what do we have? We have a 5-1 emotional manifestor. What stands out? So when I'm looking at this right away, I tend to look at it the way that I would look at an adult chart and then eliminate things that don't feel that relevant. So when talking about the 4 transformations, which I love to focus on, I'm not going to do that for this kid. I'm going to focus more on their determination, their cognition, and some elements of their environment, but we're going to leave it there. We're really not concerned about the perspective or motivation of this child yet. And the goal here is to give tips to the parents. How can they best support a child? So, okay, thinking about raising kids according to human design is very interesting because the goal here is not to raise children according to a new set of rules. In many ways, raising your kids according to their design helps you understand where to back off as a parent and to let the child's uniqueness develop or differentiation develop. So we're looking for signs of uniqueness and differentiation in this baby that the parents can support, respect, encourage. Ideally, we want to teach kids strategy and authority. So this is a very interesting one, right? I've got a 1-year-old manifestor. They're not exactly going to be conversational, but they might be communicative. I'm assuming they're going to be rather communicative. And I'm not going to assume that they're challenging, but I do think that there will be points of struggle that the parents might need a little bit of help or support with. If the manifestor is here to have impact, and ultimately they have their impact, well, there's a variety of ways, but when we say that the manifestor aura is closed and repelling, the repelling quality isn't so much that it pushes other people away from them, it's that it pushes other people's aura against themselves. Like when I approach a manifestor, the repelling quality that I feel from them isn't telling me, get out of here. It's pushing my own projector aura closer into me. It's like compressing my own aura, and we feel that as like a pushback effect or an impact effect. Manifestor children tend to come across a little bit like a bulldozer. There tends to be a pushy, impactful, assertive, articulate, direct nature about them. And parents have a tendency to want to manage this or soften this or eliminate this. There's a very cool thing that if you believe in human design, you believe that we're supposed to be our own authorities. So if you have a manifestor child and you also think this person is supposed to be their own authority, you might think that maybe you got an easier time because you have a child who's more naturally inclined to be their own authority. If you're looking for a fairly strong, independent, willful, just go out and do it kind of I don't want to say parent-child dynamic, but if that's the kind of kid that sounds ideal to you, this is an awesome baby for you to end up with. So we want to encourage this child, not to bulldoze per se, but to initiate, to take the lead, to be direct about what they want or what they don't want. Now, as much as I'm expecting a level of directness in the communication, the fact that we're dealing with an emotional authority means that, well, they may have an unfussy communication style, it doesn't mean that there's clarity on what they want to say all the time. Their language can be very direct, borderline a little bit cutting, maybe. Like, we have two emotional channels here. So the channel of openness is really meant to be expressed in a high. Channel of openness is one of the only emotional channels where there's actually more encouragement to come out, make your decisions, etc., from a high place, because when this person is in a high place, they are more influential and more attractive to others around them. If I look a little bit more into the channels, I've got channel of community, emotional, tribal, a physical touch component to it. So physical touch is important to this baby. Then I've also got an individual, acoustic, mutative wave. So words are very important to this baby. So things that will affect their mood or their emotional state will predominantly be language and physical contact. Touch and words are very, very important. And I also have a floating channel of abstraction. So we've got a split definition kid here. If I'm looking at my bridges, 43 and 56 are our primary bridges. Otherwise, we could use channels to do it. But we've got a floating, abstract, collective channel. So when we fall into all three circuitry groups, tribal, individual, and collective, we do have a fairly balanced person here. Someone who, they care about a lot of the things. They care about the words, they care about the touch, they care about the resources, they care about the visual. Like, it's actually kind of hard to pinpoint maybe what senses this child is going to work with the most. And so then I'm going to look over to cognition. So their smell is very important to them. So I've got an olfactory cognition, and more specifically, I have a splenic based cognition. Smell and taste belong to the splenic awareness center. So intriguing here is that we've got a splenic cognition, but we've got a solar plexus authority. Now, their smell cognition is enhanced by direct light determination. So I've got a circumstance baby. Eating in the light is eating in a circumstance. But I have to acknowledge that no person is eating the circumstance themselves. Like, this child doesn't live on sunlight. It's a very important distinction. This is not, oh, I eat the light. Like, you're not photosynthesis. Oh my God, if you actually could eat the light, you would be a plant. But you're not. The significance of the direct light is that the brain takes in better nutrition, or gets what it needs, when it is taking in within the light. Being in the light is the circumstance that greatly benefits this person's active brain. Now, we still have to look at the ingredient, right? Because I said this 1-year-old is not eating sunlight. I always look at the circumstance that the ingredient is also being exposed to. Now, how to play with foods with a manifestor baby is also very intriguing, right? Because if I had a sacral baby, I might take a variety of foods that are grown in the dark and grown in the light, and put them in front of the sacral baby and say, would you like this or this? Would you like this or this? You know, we're going to give options and response. I personally have deep curiosities about certain foods and their exposure to light. If you are a direct light being, do you prefer an apple to a peanut? Like, how do you feel about things that are grown in the dark, or things that are maybe... the water one is different. The water is actually more of a sound quality one to me, but that's a segue. I don't... Anyway. Think about foods that are grown in the light. Like, a potato is grown underground. A peanut is grown underground. There's a dark component to this. I would be so curious to know if an indirect light person really likes potatoes and peanuts, whereas maybe a direct light person loves the things that grow from the bushes and the trees that are sitting out in the sun all day, every day. Maybe berries are one of the greatest things that a direct light person can have. I don't know. These are curious to me. But if this was my manifestor child, how would I explore this? I might have a bowl of potatoes and a bowl of, well, I don't know if this baby can eat peanuts. At 1.5 years old, probably not a lot of peanuts going on for this kid, but maybe peanut butter. Okay, does this kid like peanut butter? Does this kid not like peanut butter? What's the difference between a nut that grows underground and a nut that grows up in a tree? Okay, so are there varieties of nuts? I wonder, like, how much sun exposure does this kid get? And at 1.5, they're probably not just going outside independently on their own whenever they want to. Are they trying to escape outside when the weather is really good? Are they trying to crawl consistently towards the window with the natural light coming in? Are there any ways in which this manifestor child is initiating a light component in their life? Are they trying to get towards things that have more light? Now, I'm quite literal about this, like absorbed sunlight. But we're also looking at waves. So to be light determination or sound determination, or to be feelings or touch cognition, when we're dealing with the 5 and 6 level, we're dealing with things that are more solar plexus based. When you think about sound, you think about sound waves. When you think about light, we think about light waves. These both belong to the solar plexus. How does the solar plexus operate right now? In a wave. There's a lot of wave to this child. The direct light is a wave. Their emotions are waves. The right wave will be very regulating to this child, and the wrong wave will be very dysregulating to this child. Now, also smell. Something that would be very intriguing to me is, and I would ask both of the parents or caregivers who observed this child the most, who did the baby bond with the fastest? Who did the baby try and move towards? Who did the baby reject? Who did the baby push away from? And how do these people smell? Who is the baby the most attached to or bonded to? And how does this person smell? Now, it's very intriguing because we can't really tell what smells turn this baby off. I don't know if they're able to express that yet. But we can see what they like or what they're drawn to because they will try to get there or, increase their proximity to the thing. I have an active brain, direct sunlight. This is a baby who's going to eat consistently. And manifestor children do not tend to want other people to interfere with them. So there's a very good chance that this child is going to sneak snacks. As soon as this child has the ability to break into the snack cupboard, they're probably going to. Now, being smell and being caves. Environment is not supposed to be significant until post-Saturn return. In many ways, you could loosely look at this like Saturn return is the beginning of becoming an adult in human design. And there's an idea of like separation from not just the family of origin, but the house of origin, and like going out into the world to make something for yourself. Like it's kind of this like moving out and starting your own life. Like that's when your actual environment is supposed to take over, because your environment is indicative of the people that you're supposed to meet in this life. This 1-year-old does not need to go into its perfect environment so that it can meet the right forces in this lifetime. It's with the right forces already. It's with its parents. And some of you might hear that and have a like, like parents aren't always the right people for the child, but I genuinely don't really have an opinion on that, nor do I want to get into much of a conversation about it. You are born to the people that you are born to. And this 1-year-old cannot advocate differently for themselves to go find a different family. So they are with the people that, in theory, they have no choice but to be with for now. But we can utilize their environment beneficially to regulate the body against resistance, which is another way of saying against disease. So being in a cave's environment will help this child recover from illnesses. And again, it is really hard to have a conversation with a 1.5-year-old about whether or not an environment meets their specific needs for caves. But caves is ultimately about security, protection. So we will see little qualities of caves developing in this kid where maybe you can't find them one day and then you realize they're in a cupboard. You know, they've taken all of the towels out of the laundry cupboard and they've made themselves a little like nap spot in there. Look for the times when the child is in a more confined space and they want to have control over it and they don't really want to leave it. Like if they start to like push your body out of a room and then try and close a door behind you. Like we don't have to use a lot of words to communicate our desires sometimes. If this kid is bulldozing you in a different direction, they are trying to inform you that they need some type of thing in their life, some version of regulation likely, and this is how they're going to attempt to go about it. So if I were to babysit for you, okay, here's a fun one. So, I'm going to take your kid for the day. I'm going to spend a lot of time with them outside because of the direct light component. I'm not going to ask their kid a lot of questions. I will give general statements, like maybe the baby and I go outside and I say, we're going out into the yard. There are lots of tools out there that you can use if you want to. We're going into the yard to play rocks, but we're not going out of the gate. Like I would give very direct statements so that the child has an expectation of what's going on and no pressure to respond inappropriately. And when I say inappropriately, I mean they don't have a response because they're non-sacral. I will expect this child to be a little bit physically aggressive and probably need to have some reminder conversations that we don't just take what we want or we don't push people away when we're mad at them. To be a manifestor is already quite intense. To be an emotional manifestor is more intense. To have 2 emotional channels as a manifestor is even more intense. And to be a 1-year-old and not quite know what to do with it is probably quite overwhelming. Now, while I'm going to acknowledge the fact that they have a focused view and a strategic mind, I'm not going to get into things like their probability view or their guilt motivation. We're not worried about the view or the motivation right now. What is more intriguing to me is the quality of leftness. We have a left active brain and a left strategic mind. So this kid is going to be a busy thinker and planner and organizer of things. So if I'm going to give activities to this child, I'm likely going to show them step by step a thing and then leave them to be more independent unless they come to me and say, like, I want help or I need this from you, right? Like, I would likely say, here is a bucket of blocks. I'm going to put the red ones in this container and the orange ones in this container and the yellow ones in this container. And then I might just start to do that. And the child might also start to do that. Maybe they'll mimic or something. Or maybe I put a bucket of blocks in front of this kid and I put 4 empty bowls next to it. This child is naturally going to find a way to take what is in this bucket and divvy it up into these 4 different bowls according to some type of inner organization that, I don't know, they use, they're drawn to. And then because we have a left-focused view, again, I'm going to expect this child to make nuance here, make direct eye contact frequently. This is a child that I think is going to like stare right at you. I think this child will stare at other people or look with an intense gaze at other people. But I think that they will actually get very uncomfortable and squeamish if people try and do that back to them, because we're dealing with a 5-1. And, well, the baby's not going to be like, I'm a 5 and I don't like your projections. They're still going to feel that without the language to articulate that, because the 5 is always uncomfortable being not witnessed, not even so much watched. Like, the 5 in many ways very much wants to be watched, but it wants to be watched in a way where it's controlled an aspect of the projection. 5s are not comfortable with just anybody watching them, and there's quite a bit of 5 in this baby's chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 fifth lines. That's a lot. There's a lot of projection that this baby is uncomfortably aware of. As the kid develops, there may be some assumption put on them that they might fall into more of like a hyper-focused, hyper-fixated category. They have a variable that could fairly easily present as ADHD. Being boyish, having 2 motors, boyish, that's such a funny thing to say. I actually don't know if this is a boy. Why did I say boy? Is it a boy? Okay, hold on. I gotta look at the intake form just to see. I'm like, am I making stuff up? Am I projecting? I'm talking about the projection. I'm like, this 5. And I also might just be projecting that I see Manifestor as a little bit more of a masculine design. Oh, I don't like that that's coming out of my mouth. I want to apologize. I'm not sure how to. How can I best guide my emotional manifestor child, and what are important needs for him? We did read that accurately. It is a boy. And yet, there's a little bit of the joke about, if people have a baby and someone says like, oh, is it a boy or a girl? And then the parent says like, we're going to wait for it to grow up and decide. That's why I laughed when I was like, boy-ish. I don't know how this child is going to grow up and see themselves or identify. But I think that there's going to be the projection that they're boyish and energetic and a little bit like hyper-focused, intense. And there may be pressure from teachers, caregivers, etc. to like over-regulate, or possibly like they might just want to deal with your kid in ways that are not necessarily healthy or appropriate for their definition. I'm very curious to know what the energy of this child is like. I'm assuming, certain manifested qualities like a bit standoffish, a bit closed, a bit repelling, but also like it's a baby, so I imagine he is cuddly and sweet. We're dealing with a channel of community here. Like, this is a very touch-based channel, but we have to remember the binary of it. Like, I already was like, ooh, this could be a more aggressive touch-based channel. It's accurate that the most physically abusive definition is tribal definition. It has the keynote of touch. I'm not just going to pick on the tribe, though. Individual abuse tends to be verbal abuse. Collective abuse would be the withholding of resources. But tribal abuse will be physical. But again, everything is binary, duality. So what could be aggressive physical contact can also be extremely loving physical contact. Gate 37 is a gate of like very deep affection. This is maybe a baby that is actually very bonded and close and affectionate and sweet and Like, I can see this baby holding on to mom and being smell cognition and like cuddling into mom's neck and like falling asleep there because the smell of mom right there is so soothing and regulating. I would speak in statements often to this child. I would give them a lot of options, but without asking them about their response to the options. I would play with storytelling a lot. The channel of abstraction is a wonderful storyteller. It's not a good true storyteller, let me say that, right? There are qualities of embellishment and the best way to summarize this is like one of my favorite human design memes I ever saw, which was about the ajna, and it's like when you don't know the answer, just make shit up. Rob will say that the channel of abstraction would be the worst person to rewrite the books of history because they'll fill in the gaps with what they think makes an engaging story, not necessarily with what is true. But I think that we can use all of these qualities for good or bad. So if there is a gift here of storytelling that might have an extra gift in fantasy or embellishment, let's use it for that reason. Maybe this child loves having books read to them. Maybe this child wants to make up their own stories and tell their caregivers about, tell their parents, tell their friends about it. Maybe they're just blah, 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 blabbing in some made up language all the time because they think that they're storytelling. I've also got a hanging 11 and a hanging 33, and both of those add to this quality. We've got a gate of kind of fantastical ideas and then also of sharing secrets. And it's all within the same circuitry. I also want to point out that in an undefined 60, in an undefined root with a hanging 60 that is activated twice in Pluto, 60.4 and 60.2, we have a limitation problem. Gate 60 is, can I accept my limitation? Can I wait for that moment of perfect mutation? Can I get to the difficulty at the beginning on the other side? Gate 60, being an individual gate, is deeply melancholic, and most people who have a hanging 60 identify with being depressed at some point in their life. 60 is it's not actually depressed. It's deep melancholy that you don't know when it's going to end, which creates a little bit of like a depressive perspective. I would expect that this child is going to have some really bluesy times. Hanging 20, hanging 28, hanging 60, hanging 55, whole channel of openness, hanging 2, hanging 23, hanging 24. We have the potential for quite a bit of melancholy. And because of all of the ones I'm seeing on the design side, first line body, first tone cognition, first color environment, this is a child who has a deep need for security, paired with the undefined spleen. Well, this person is, I think, this child will grow up to be, I think, quite independent. I do have some concerns that they will unnecessarily hold on to things that are a little bit toxic for them. And likely with their ego, they'll see themselves as having the ability to get through whatever it is. We just want to be careful that they don't put themselves in too many dangerous situations where they have to rely on their willpower to save them, because that can lead to some pretty big health problems later in life, especially with the stomach. We've got gate 40 activated. Gate 40 is in particular the gate of the stomach. We could have some digestive problems if this child is not honoring, I don't want to say like just their authority, but yeah, like the ego is pointed to the authority. The ego is going through the solar plexus. So the ego channel is really not the authority channel. It's one of the authority channels because there are two emotional channels for this person. And really the authority center is the solar plexus. But if there's a lack of clarity and a desire to move forward, this person will end up tapping their ego too much and they could have stomach problems. So I would even be aware of this from a very young age. If your child starts to complain about a tummy ache, what are they doing that is premature for them? They're trying to push themselves to do something that they're not really ready to do, and it's giving them stress tummy. I'm not saying this is already happening. I'm saying this is something to be mindful of in the future. Okay, I've riffed quite a bit. I feel pretty good about this. And I loved reading for a 1-year-old. This was a very different perspective. Okay, on to the next one.